Republican Senator Kelly Ayotte is trying to hang on to her job here against fierce competition from Democrat Governor Maggie Hassan. We invited the governor to speak with us tonight in a separate interview. She declined, but Senator Ayotte has joined us. How are you?
Great, Brett. Good to be with you.
This race is tight.
It is.
This new Monmouth poll is out. It's directly tied. Inside that poll, Senator, there are favorable, unfavorable, and your favorable has dropped 8 points since September, and your unfavorable has gone up 3. Obviously, there was a debate in there where you had this nuanced position of supporting but not endorsing Donald Trump. Is that hurting you here?
I actually think we always know this is going to be a close race, and right now the people of New Hampshire are focused on who's going to be their voice in the Senate, who's going to be that strong voice to stand up for their rights, to fight for them no matter what, and to get things done on the fiscal state of the country, keeping the country safe in a dangerous world. And now with rising costs under Obamacare, this is such a big issue in this race.
You know, you've said that it's important for Republicans to hold on to the Senate. You talk to people around there and they say, why? Why is it so important? Why does it matter? Even if it's a President Clinton, what happens? Why is it important?
Well, it matters so much in terms of the Supreme Court, in terms of the fiscal state of the country. You know, I'm running against Governor Hassan, who's never seen a tax increase she doesn't like. So in terms of, you know, people keeping more money in their pockets, our small businesses continuing to thrive and grow instead of being burdened by regulations and increased taxes in Washington. And it matters so much if we're going to do anything about the health care law, because can you imagine Hillary Clinton with a rubber stamp like my opponent in terms of what she would do on all those issues?
You've used that line, the rubber stamp, that Governor Hassan is a rubber stamp for Hillary Clinton. We asked her about that the other day, and here's what she said.
I will always stand up to my party. I disagree with Hillary Clinton and the president on closing Guantanamo. I reject the president's proposal. I don't think it addresses national security interests or our vital interests abroad. I oppose and differ with Secretary Clinton on the fact that I think we should take a temporary pause and truly audit our refugee vetting system, because the FBI and CIA have said they have concerns about it. I differ with the president on the TPP. I differ with both of them on an internet sales tax.
So she says she stands up to her
sure,
party.
she has her talking points there, but on fundamental issues for New Hampshire, first of all, the security of the country. One of the first things she did in this race was endorse the Iran agreement, which is dangerous for the country, for the world. We've seen Iran's bad behavior. I have been one of the biggest critics of it. Obamacare, thinking about the higher costs, higher deductibles, higher premiums, higher co-pays. She's with Secretary Clinton on this. She's going to follow her lead, and, you know, Secretary Clinton actually wants to expand Obamacare, not fix it with more competition, more choice, less one-size-fits-all from Washington. And again, she has a long history of tax increases. Secretary Clinton wants $1 trillion tax increase. And, you know, Governor Hassan has increased taxes on small businesses, campers, smokers, you name it in New Hampshire, and she's wanted to tax it. So these are big issues for my constituents where she is not going to differ from Hillary Clinton.
You mentioned health care and the premiums that we're hearing about across the country going up, and the administration's confirming. Here in New Hampshire, the Granite State actually has the second lowest increases in the country for the benchmark increases for the silver plan compared to other states, in between 2 and 14%. How do you convince somebody
here? Tell that to my constituents, because they're telling me the stories. You know, I was at the Olive Garden. I had the young man who was the cook who had a plan he liked before. He can't keep it. I'm meeting families that have higher deductibles, higher co-pays, and they had plans they liked, they couldn't keep. They're seeing rising health care costs. You know, even if you have a 10% increase, that's a big deal for a family, and also deductibles going higher. So this is what I'm hearing from my constituents, and Governor Hassan is not going to do anything to change that cost trajectory or to make sure that New Hampshire has more choice.
It's a similar story in the New Hampshire economy. The unemployment here is 2.9%, well below the national average. The median income is higher than the national average by far. How do you make the case that the Obama administration handling of the economy here in New Hampshire is having a negative effect and should therefore lead to a Republican
Senate? I can make that case quite easily, because there's not a small business I visit that doesn't have a story from an alphabet soup agency in Washington of more paperwork, more burdens, more regulations. And again, when we think about some of the proposals that are out there, Governor Hassan, she vetoed a budget because it decreased business tax taxes. She was the architect of a small business income tax in this state that thankfully others later overturned. So there's some big differences for businesses in this state when it comes to this Senate race. I happen to be the wife of a small business owner too, landscaping and snow plowing business, so I live it. I know what we need to do, and we can't have Washington, continuing to burden our small businesses on taxes, regulations, higher health care costs, and these are all issues where there's big differences in this race.
Your husband's also a former A-10 pilot.
He is.
And you obviously have a lot of experience on national security issues. Are you satisfied with the state of the U.S. military now? And what will the next president, whoever he or she is, have to deal with on that front?
Brett, I'm not satisfied. I believe that these automatic cuts to our military, which I opposed, are taking us in a direction where we're shrinking the size of the military. It's very dangerous in light of the threats we're facing from ISIS, Iran, aggression from China in the South China Sea, many of the terrorist groups around the world, Al-Qaeda still continuing to threaten us. So we need to do a lot more to make sure that we have the equipment and training for our men and women in uniform, and we continue to support our veterans. That has been a priority of mine because so many veterans still, unfortunately, are dealing with the VA and struggling to get the care that they deserve for having defended this nation.
So which presidential candidate is best positioned to advance U.S. interests around the globe?
Well, I know my role in the Armed Services Committee is I'm going to make sure. Yeah, I think the people of this country are going to decide that because from my perspective, my role is going to stand up for the military no matter who's in that Oval Office. That's what I've done, and that's what I'm going to continue to do.
In the primary, Donald Trump won here by 19.5 points. Aren't you risking kind of alienating some of those voters by the position you've taken?
Well, my position is based on what is in my heart on this issue. I'm a former prosecutor, and when those tapes came out, that crossed a line into criminality for me. I'm the mother of a daughter, an American first, so I'm going to be writing in Mike Pence.
All right, I want to ask you finally, we just did this big piece about the drug epidemic. Here in New Hampshire, opioid, it's at the center of the nation's opioid epidemic, one of the highest per capita addiction rates in the U.S. Total deaths from opiates or opioids, 245, projected to be 488 total drug deaths here in New Hampshire by the end of the year. It's a huge problem.
Devastating. I've met so many mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers who've lost someone that they love, and this is an issue I've worked on in the Senate with Rob Portman. The two of us were the lead Republicans with two Democrats. We passed a bill this summer, the Comprehensive Addiction and Recovery Act. Can't do it all from Washington, but it's really focusing on the help for the state and local efforts on prevention, treatment, and recovery. And I've also been focusing on our southern border. That's where the heroin and this deadly drug called fentanyl are coming from, to places like New Hampshire, and more interdiction there and border security will help as well.
Senator Ayotte, we appreciate your time.
Thanks, Brett. Great to be with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, we did invite Governor Hassan here as well.